Hello friends, welcome back to your CSS tutorial, and in previous tutorial we have seen 3 different ways to include CSS in your web page. And in this tutorial what we are going to see, so the first thing we will see is the basic syntax we use for CSS. Okay, and the next and most important thing we are going to see is different types of selectors available in CSS. So suppose you want to apply style to a specific HTML element, then in that case you need to use different types of CSS selectors. And as usual we are going to see the interview question at the end of this video. So friends, don't forget to subscribe. Let's code. So first of all we will see the basic syntax we use for CSS, okay, with the help of some pictorial representation. And why we are using lot of pictorial or graphical representation? Because with the help of pictorial representation or graphical representation, it helps your brain to remember things for longer term. Okay, so what we have done here, we have declared a CSS property font size equal to 10 pixel, okay, and the text to the left side of the colon is called as property name, the text to the right side of the colon is called as value, and both of them are separated by colon. And we always terminate the CSS statement with the help of semicolon. So let me revise it again. We have declared a property font size equal to, then we specify a colon, and then after colon we specify the value for that property, okay, and we always terminate the CSS statement with the help of semicolon. So this is the basic syntax you will be going to see all this series. Okay, let's take a look at different types of selectors available in CSS. First of all, what are selectors? Suppose you have a heading element or paragraph element declared in your web page and you want to apply specific CSS style only to that element, then in that case you need to use different types of CSS selectors to apply styles. So we will see one by one all types of selectors. So the first selector is called as element selector, and for example I have specified h1, that stands for heading, and inside curly braces you can apply any style to the h1 element. So here suppose I specify color is equal to blue, then all the headings on my web page will be of blue color. So in this way you can use element selector to apply style to the h1 elements. But what this is doing, this is applying style to the all heading elements present in your web page. But in some cases you do not want to apply the style for every heading element. Suppose you want to apply blue color for first heading element and other color for rest of the heading elements, then in that case you cannot use element selector. So we are having different type of selector in that case, and that is called as ID selector. And how we use ID selector, we declare a ID property inside an HTML element, and then we grab that ID and we use that ID inside the CSS sheet with the help of pound sign. And inside curly braces you can specify the CSS property you want to apply to that specific element only, okay, and this ID will be unique in the whole web page. So whatever CSS property you specified inside this curly braces will be applied to that element only. Next one, and the most commonly used type of CSS selector, is called as class selector. Suppose you want to define a bunch of CSS property and you want to reuse that property throughout the HTML page, then what you can do, you can come into the CSS style sheet, you can specify the period symbol, after that you have to specify your class name, and inside curly braces you can define any number of CSS property and you can reuse that CSS property throughout your HTML page with the help of just this class name. You can put this class name with the help of class attribute to any HTML element, and those styles will be applied to those HTML elements. If you do not understand any type of CSS selector or the syntax for the CSS, don't worry about it. We are going to see each of them in the practical implementation. So let's code it. So back to Visual Code, let me declare a heading here, save the changes, and we are having nice heading, welcome to WebTech Tuts, okay. And for the few upcoming tutorials we will be using internal CSS, that is we will be declaring a style tag inside the head tag, and we will be declaring all our CSS inside the style tag. So with that we can see the CSS styling and the HTML elements simultaneously, okay. So first we will talk about the element selector, and how we use element selector. We go to our style sheet, then we specify the element we want to apply the style. In this case we want to apply style to the h1 element. After the h1 element we specify the curly braces, and inside curly braces you can apply any style to that h1 element. And now we will look at the basic syntax for the CSS also. So what does basic syntax style says, we have to declare a property. So the property name is color in our case, and then we have to specify property value after the colon. And what property value we are going to specify? So suppose we are going to specify the property value orange. So here is the property name, here is the property value, and we terminated CSS statement with the help of semicolon. And what we are going to see, we are going to see the h1 element. So let me save the changes, and look, our heading becomes orange ink. So in this way you can use element selector. Let me add one more heading over here and saving the changes. Look, we are having another heading, but the color of that heading automatically becomes orange because of this element selector. But what if you do not want to apply the orange color to all your heading in your web page? Then in that case we need to use ID selector. So let's see how we can use ID selector. To use ID selector, you need to go into the h1 element, then you need to specify ID property. Okay, and this ID property should be unique all over the web page. Okay, let me save the changes. And how we can use that ID selector, we need to go into the style sheet, then we have to use pound sign, and after pound sign we have to specify that particular ID. This should match with this ID selector. Okay, and click to look at the web browser. After I save the changes, look, we are having the orange color applied to only first heading element. So in this way you can use the ID selector to apply the styles to the specific element. Now we are going to see the most important type of selector, that is class selector. So what I will do, I will specify a paragraph element over here. Okay, and we need some dummy text inside it, so I will use lorem. If you specify lorem and press tab, then what it will do, it will enter some dummy text for you automatically. So let me save the changes, and look, we are having some dummy text. I will copy this 2 more times. Let me save the changes, and we are having 3 paragraphs in our HTML web page. So now what we are going to do, we are going to apply same style for the second heading element and all the paragraph elements in our web page. And what style we are going to apply, we will be applying italic effect to all the elements in our HTML web page except first heading tag. And we are going to use the class selector. How we use class selector, we go into the style sheet, then we specify the period sign like this, and then you need to specify the class name. Suppose we specify the test class, and we should never specify the names like that. For the CSS classes, you should always specify names which serves the purpose of your styling. So instead of test, we will specify the italic style. Okay, let me specify the name is called as italic style. And if you are having 2 different names in your class name, then you have to separate them with the help of hyphen. Okay, this is a standard naming convention. And inside the italic style class, we will specify the font style is equal to italic. Alright, let me save the changes, and now we want to apply this class to a h1 element, second h1 element. And for that, what we need to do, we need to go inside the h1 element and we have to use the class attribute. Okay, and the value of that class attribute should be the name of your class. Okay, so I will paste the name of class here. Let me save the changes, and look, we are having the italic effect applied to the heading element automatically. So now what we want to do, we want to apply the same italic effect to all the paragraph elements in our web page. For that, what I need to do, I need to copy that class attribute from the h1 element, and I need to paste that attribute inside the every paragraph element I want to apply the italic effect. So let me do that, and after saving changes, look, we are having the nice italic effect applied to every paragraph element. In this way, you can declare any number of CSS property inside an class, and you can reuse this class to any number of HTML element to reuse your CSS styles. So the question for today's tutorial is, which is universal or wildcard selector? But wait, we have not seen any kind of universal or wildcard selector. Then what is it? We denote the wildcard selector or declared wildcard selector with the help of this asterisk sign, and it is also called as universal selector. But why we use wildcard selector? We use wildcard selector to apply a specific style to all the elements present in your web page. So suppose you declared wildcard selector like this, and inside curly braces you specify the property font size equal to 16 pixel, then this font size will be applied to each and every element present in your web page. So we use wildcard selector to apply styles for every element in our web page, and we declared it with the help of asterisk symbol. So friends, that's it for this tutorial. If you are having any questions, then drop them in comment section. I will be really happy to answer your question. So don't forget to subscribe. See you in upcoming tutorial that is about inheritance in CSS.